Imagine looking out over a bustling city skyline, and in a fraction of a second, the entire grid goes completely black. Without the global internet, the physical world stops. Supply chains freeze mid-shipment, air traffic control towers go blind, financial transactions evaporate, and local communication networks instantly fail. We interact with the internet through screens, but it operates as an invisible nervous system wiring the planet together, a system we rely on entirely, yet rarely notice until it breaks. To see the true scale of this infrastructure, we have to look backward to a time when information was scattered, fragile, and difficult to keep alive. In the ancient world, keeping a record of anything took immense physical effort. Scribes, like the ancient Mycenaeans, spent most of their energy trying to preserve the fragments of knowledge they already possessed. Look at this rectangular clay tablet containing linear B script. Every piece of information had to fit within a strict spatial boundary. Carving into clay or stone was slow, and the materials themselves were vulnerable to damage. Over centuries, these records inevitably fractured. Despite the efforts of scholars copying text by hand, the passage of time usually meant a lessening of knowledge. This printed page resting on the tympan of a replica Gutenberg press marks the point where that dynamic reversed. Exact copies could now be mass-produced. Because scholars no longer had to spend their lives hunting down and hand-copying scattered manuscripts, they could finally gather new observations. Knowledge began to accumulate. Yet printed words were still bound to heavy paper and slow transport routes. A book could only travel as fast as a horse, a ship, or eventually a train. The printing press conquered the decay of time, but humanity still needed to conquer physical distance. That solution started to take shape in the 1960s. With machines like these large red IBM mainframes. Early computers were massive, isolated calculation engines used primarily by military and academic researchers. In 1969, ARPANET introduced packet switching. Instead of sending files down one vulnerable wire, data is broken into pieces, sent across separate pathways, and reassembled. By 1974, TCP/IP provided the universal language, allowing completely different networks to talk to one another. For the next 15 years, this network remained highly technical. You had to be a scientist or a programmer to navigate it. Then, in 1989, computer scientist Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. He designed a system of links and accessible pages that anyone could navigate, turning an academic experiment into a mass medium. Opening the network to the public set the stage for a transformation in global economic activity. By the mid-1990s, personal computing moved from a niche interest to a public necessity. Crowded internet cafes like this one filled with people accessing bulletin boards and sending emails. As usage scaled up, the network required immense physical infrastructure. This thick fiber optic cable running along the ocean floor is part of the hardware that carries the world's data between continents. This table shows the compound annual growth rates for machine-to-machine connections, which reached nearly 44% in Latin America as industrial equipment began plugging directly into the network. In developing nations, this wireless infrastructure allowed communities to bypass traditional landlines. Rural areas could plug into global data streams using basic mobile devices. In Kenya, a mobile payment system known as M-Pesa became so common that roughly a quarter of the nation's entire gross domestic product began flowing through it. That same connectivity now guides automated blue gantry cranes handling shipping containers and powers fleet telematics that track transport vehicles to prevent massive food waste. This digital ecosystem now dictates the mechanics of the physical economy. The economist Joseph Schumpeter used the term creative destruction to describe technological progress. While this digital infrastructure created immense economic value, it is also dissolving established ways of thinking. Psychologists call this externalization. We are effectively migrating our storage from inside our heads to the servers in our pockets. Recent studies show that when people know a search engine is available, they spend far less effort using memory strategies or studying. The motivation to internally hold on to easily attainable facts drops. We see this in daily life. Spatial memory weakens because GPS navigates for us. We forget phone numbers, and we experience a decline in source memory, forgetting where we learned a fact, or believing we recalled it ourselves when we actually just looked it up. Anthropologists note a similar dynamic happened thousands of years ago with early writing. When a clay tablet remembers, the person no longer needs to. By constructing a globally accessible mind, we are outsourcing the cognitive processes that used to define human intelligence. That outsourcing is accelerating with the advancement of artificial intelligence. While the internet served as a passive storage drive, AI actively generates new information and solves problems independently of the human mind. Our cognitive workload is pushing further beyond the physical confines of the skull. The ultimate question is who humanity becomes when it exists without its own internal memory.